Hey, good evening. So we had a crazy last week, trying to get our seed cleaned, trying to get our peas cleaned, stuff like that, making a ton of feed. Haven't uploaded a video, I think, in over a week. So tonight I was going to do one with the whole cleaning grain scenario. I was going to talk about screening. So in the with the feed that I make, I get a lot of questions about, well, do you have screenings? Where can we get screenings? Are screenings valuable? And so on and so forth. So I'm only going to cover the 5 grains that we grow. Canola is basically out because the only reason you would, I think, clean canola at this point is if you had like a horrendous growing year, or you left the canola out over winter and it was full of, deer excrement and mouse excrement and stuff like that, full of weed seeds. You would maybe then clean it to upgrade it. But obviously in that situation, you would not want to get those screenings. Peas are a little different too. The peas that we grow and basically peas in general that get cleaned, they get cleaned for export. They put a certain size screen in there. So anything that's too big, so big whole peas, anything that's too small, small whole peas, and then the broken peas go through that into the screenings. So if you've had a good growing year where you don't have a lot of weed seeds in your peas or a lot of pods and stuff like that, what you can end up with is basically just a bunch of broken peas and peas that are too big and too small to fit, to fit the export criteria. So those would essentially be the best value, really. If and this is all too. I mean, you have to stick your hand in the bag and look and see what's in there. But if it's right and everything like that, that would be good value. Pea screenings would be something you could definitely look into getting, and it's for that reason, right? I mean, there's going to be big peas in there, small peas in there, and a bunch of broken peas in there. So where you run into an issue, I guess, with screenings and the bulk of screenings is in the cereal, so your oats and your barley and your wheat. So if you just assume that, the grain is the sum of all of its parts, if you go out and we'll just call it rough seed, it's bin run, whatever. So you had your growing season and you get your combine set and you go out and you combine, everything that goes into the hopper should be, it should mainly be the cereal, right? It should be the barley kernel, the wheat kernel, the oat kernel. We rarely have ideal growing conditions throughout the growing season. So you're going to end up with weed seeds, light seeds, immature seeds, things like that. Now, even weed seeds could possibly have feed value depending on what seed they are, and they may not be detrimental. Some are, right? Stinkweeds and stuff like that contain milk, contain meat in high volumes. There's various weed seeds that can actually taint the way your eggs taste in chicken feed and stuff like that. But so when you're into looking into buying screenings, and this video isn't to sway you either way, it's just to bring awareness to it. First thing you have to do is understand bushel weight. So the standard bushel weight of oats is 34 pounds per bushel, barley is 48 pounds per bushel, and wheat is 60 pounds per bushel. That's calculated, one of the way they do is with a half liter. So there's a funnel that sits on top of this, and you fill that funnel up, it slowly fills this up, and then you take a striker, level it off, and weigh it, and you get your grams per half liter, and there's a chart that shows you what it is. Up here in the piece, we can generally end up with a higher bushel weight than standard. So our wheat might be 63, 64, 65 pounds. Our barley is usually 55 pounds plus, and even our oats can be up as high as 45, 46 pounds. So that's all great feed. There's a ton of research done on light grain and heavy grain in the feed world, both ways too. I mean, do the research and believe what you want. I read one article once, and I heard it from others that barley, and I'm not exactly sure the number, but below a certain bushel weight has actually no feed value at all. This is what the article stated, meaning that the animal really can't eat enough to gain. So it's actually like taking more energy to eat that light grain than it is beneficial to the animal. So understand that, and if you're interested in buying a large volume of screenings, it would be worthwhile to get yourself one of those half-liter cups and the scale and stuff. Places like UFA sell them. The charts you can print off the government website and get yourself a little scale and do that. And then back to assessing. So on an ideal growing year, because when grain is cleaned, it's not just to get the weed seeds and the chaff and stuff out, it's also to size it. So you could potentially, I mean, if you had a field where there was no weed seeds in there, you may end up with just immature seeds or some lighter seeds or even some bigger seeds that don't fit what you're trying to do, which is trying to get the seed as uniform as possible. Because when you set up your seeding rate, you actually count out 1,000 kernels and you weigh them, and then you type that into a formula with the germination rate and stuff like that, and then you can get your seeding rate. So you want the seed all sized. So sometimes if you had really good growing season and the grain is all good, you could end up with just a lot of good grain in the screenings that just didn't fit the sizing part of it, right? So, and you'd be able to tell that by weighing it. So if you go to wherever you're getting your screenings from, a local plant or a farmer or whatever, and, you take your half liter and you weigh it, and it still comes out to be, we'll use barley as an example, but around 46, 48, 50 pounds, that's very possible. It could be, you're going to end up with some extra weed seeds and stuff in there and some chaff and things like that. But as long as bushel weight's up, there's really nothing wrong with feeding that. Situations where you run into, and you're going to want to make yourself familiar with seeds. I mean, get yourself a weed seed book so you can tell if there's noxious weeds in there and stuff like that. And some animals are more susceptible to certain weed seeds than others. So you're going to want to be doing that visual, right? And you're going to want to make sure that what you're getting isn't actually just a bag of concentrated weed seeds or light grain or whatever was making the rough grain awful is now going to be just concentrated into that. Now that shouldn't even be the whole deterrent, because another thing you can do, right, if we assume that if the grain was left rough or as bin run as they call it, that would be great feed. Then if you can get the screenings for next to nothing or a very cheap price, you could buy yourself a bag of good grain and just slowly mix it in to whatever. For instance, you do one 5-gallon bucket of good grain and one ice cream pail of screenings. You mix that back in, and it could easily be converted and utilized by your animals. So that's the whole thing around screenings. Is it's not that they're good or bad. We also one thing actually, I guess I should say, that could make it bad. There's been tremendous technology advancements in grain cleaning. Like, we have color sorters now. So oftentimes if weed seeds are infected, they will change color. So, and the color sorters will pull that out. So if you have a lot of wheat, one is a good one to tell. I mean, a nice healthy wheat kernel would be nice and red, right? I mean, and if they start to get infected, they'll turn purple or black or whatever. And the color sorters will shoot that out. So if you've cleaned wheat that had a high amount of that in there, now you're going to have that concentrated into your screenings. And things like ergot in wheat is detrimental to animals and people too, actually. It's, you shouldn't be feeding that in high volumes or at all. So just make yourself aware, I guess. Screenings do have value. Feed mills use a lot of them. They take them and they do just what I'm saying. They assess them for bushel weight. They assess them for feed quality. Oftentimes feed mills will have a cleaner and they'll clean it again. Now they'll clean it with less tolerances than the farmer wanted for his seed. So what they'll do, they'll just knock the weed seeds out and everything else will go another way. They'll assess the good grain kernels and stuff like that. And then that's often times where you'll see pelleted feed, right? They mill it up. They add vitamins, minerals, binding agents to it, and they turn it into a good feed. So all has its place, all has its value. Just make sure that if you're looking to buy screenings, you're taking some of the stuff into consideration more than just value. Because if you end up with a bag that's just weed seeds and extremely light grain and chaff, even if you can get that bag for $50 for a big mini bulk bag, it's actually probably worthless, and it's probably more of a headache than it is worth. So hopefully you learned something in the video. Like I said, I haven't uploaded one for a week or so. We've been just flat out doing everything else. But anyways, I'm going to head in now, have supper. We will see you all on the next one.